So now I'm going to describe all of the directions and expectations for the parabola pick project. First of all, you need to know what a parabola is, and that's that curved function that we've been looking at for quadratics. So you're going to find a picture, and by find, I mean you're going to take a picture. So you're going to take a picture in your home, something that has a curvature similar to a quadratic. I've put two examples here. One of them, obviously, you can see was taken in real time. The other one is taken from the internet. Please try to stay away from taking a picture from the internet. If you can't find any parabolas in your home, please do reach out, because we would rather this be something that you are doing from your own experience rather than a picture that you could simply just look up. So you should be taking this picture from something in your home. It can be a person, you can get creative, but try to get your own image, not use one similar to what we have here as an example. You're then going to upload that picture onto your device, and whichever device you're using, Chromebook, Surface, MacBook, it doesn't matter. You're going to upload that somehow. And if you need help on that, you can ask us some questions on how to do that. Once you have your picture, you're then going to be putting it into Desmos. And this is where you're going to have to need some help, which we hopefully have given you with these pictures. So you're going to have to upload it through Desmos, and the screenshots should help you do that. So please make sure that you follow along with each of the steps so that you can do this accurately. First thing you're going to do is you're going to go to desmos.com, and you can click this link or you can type it in yourself. Once you go to desmos.com, you're going to click this button, Start Graphing. That's going to bring you to a graph on your computer. It's going to show you that this link is live and that you can click it and go to Desmos. And this is the button you are going to click. And once you click that, Desmos should pop up for you. Okay, this is where you're going to have to be inserting your image. So I'm going to go back. The next instruction says, go to the graph settings and change your dimensions of the coordinate plane so that you are only looking at the first quadrant. And that's where you're going to find that little wrench over here, and that's what we're going to click. So if I go back to my Desmos, if I look at this, my origin is right here, but I actually don't want to be seeing all four quadrants. I only want to be seeing the first quadrant. So I'm going to change or edit that a little bit. And if I move this over here, you can see that this wrench is your graph settings. And I'm going to change this so that my X's are not in the negatives. And I'm going to make it go to, you can make it go to 10, 20, whatever makes your graph look the way you want it to. And your y-axis should go to 0, and that could be at 10 or 20 as well. So we're changing the x and the y-axis so that the lowest number possible in our range and our domain are 0. And once I do that, I will see that if I look at this, I'm just zooming out right now so that I can see that this is my first quadrant right here. This is my origin right here. And you can mess around with that. It might take some practice. It might take some time for you to mess around with that. So feel free to make it whatever you want, as long as you're only looking at the first quadrant, because that's what we care about the most. Now that we've changed our settings so that we're looking at quadrant 1, I'm going to scroll down to the next direction. It says insert your parabola into the Desmos graph. So that's where I'm going to want to go back to my Desmos, and this plus sign is going to allow you to insert an image. So you're going to click that and you're going to insert an image. Now you can insert a lot of things, but just make sure that I notice how I have mine on my desktop. Yours can be any image, and I would save it on your desktop, but it could be saved anywhere. So you're going to input your image. Notice how in the directions I've said, if your image isn't uploading, you might have to try and mess around with how you saved that image. So for example, if a .png isn't saving, or isn't opening or isn't inserting, then maybe try a JPEG or vice versa. So you may have to mess around with that a little bit. Once you insert your image, you can then put it on the grid where you want it. So I'm going to insert my image here. I'll try the McDonald's symbol for now, just so you can see a different one. And notice how now it is on my graph, but it's not really in quadrant 1. It's not where I want it to be. So I'm going to click that image. And in order to move it, you have to click the center. And you want to move it. This one actually has almost like 2 parabolas in it. And let's say I wanted it to be larger because it wasn't really big enough there. So now notice how my image starts at 0, 0. You're going to want it to start at 0, 0. And you want to be smart about where all the important parts are. So do you see how here this point is pretty important for our parabola? But it's not really at a whole number. I'm going to stretch it so that I can see if I can get this image to be at whole number points, or where at least I could estimate it the best. So I'm going to mess around with it a little bit. You may have to play around. You'll notice how mine's almost on 5 here, this vertex right here. So I'm going to mess around with it just a little bit more. So you should play around with it and get it to a place where you're happy with having to identify different aspects. So now I'm a little bit happier with where that is. I see that this starts at 0, 0. It's going to go down. This one is going to hit here somewhere if it were to continue. So maybe I want to move it down a little bit. And maybe now this hits at -1 instead. So mess around with it a little bit. Make it so that it's somewhere you want it to be. This is totally your call. Once you have your image on the coordinate plane where you want it and you're happy with where those specific points are, like your zeros and your vertex and all of those things, you're going to want to export your graph so that now your image has the coordinate plane on it. And that's where I'm going to click this little guy right here, Share Graph, and I'm going to export my image. That's going to give you an option as to how you want the lines to show up. You want the lines to be as thick as possible so that it's easy for you to see it once it's exported. You can mess around with the size, but this size should be fine. And then you want to download it. You can download it as different things. You might have to mess around with it, but notice how I just downloaded it and it popped right up as an image. And when I open that image, I can see now that the graph is on the image is on my graph exactly where I wanted it. And I can mess around with all of the rest of the project now that this image is exported. You do want to save it. So I would want to save this new image. Be aware that when you save this image somewhere, you want to be able to make sure you can still find it, and you don't want it to have the same name as your previous picture, so that you know the difference between the one that was your original and the one that now has a graph on it. Once you have your graph made and you have your image embedded in it, now it's time to figure out how you want to present your actual project. There's a lot of different options. So one option would be for you to be using Google Slides. Another option would be for you to create a poster. For this, you will need a printer so that you could print your image. Another one would be for you to audio record or video record yourself if you're somebody who is good with technology. Maybe you want to just explain verbally all of the different characteristics of your parabola. And if you have some other idea that hasn't been shared or hasn't been thought of, feel free to reach out and we can talk through whether or not it would meet the criteria that I'm looking for. So what would you need to include? What is the actual nitty-gritty of the project? So the first thing is you need to explain what the parabola is. Where did you find it? Why did you pick it? And just tell us what the actual parabola image is. The second thing that you want to include is the characteristics that we've been talking about now for a few weeks. So based on your graph, does your graph have a minimum or a maximum? What are the zeros of the function? What is the vertex of your function? What is the equation of the axis of symmetry? Is your A value going to be positive or negative? How do you know it's positive or negative based on what you see? what's the domain, and what is the range. So these are the characteristics we'll be looking for, and each one will be worth a point. Finally, after you've created your project, you need to make sure that you share it with us. So if your project is a doc or a slide, you can just share the link. If your project is a poster, then you're going to need to take a picture of that poster, and then you can save that on a Google Doc or somehow get it electronic so that you can share it with us. If you make a video, then you need to make sure that you can export that video and share the link with us as well. So once you have a link to your project, you're going to want to click here, and it's going to bring up the class rosters, and your name should be on it, or the class lists. So you're just going to find your name, and you're going to put the link in the second column. So for example, if I were to click on this, this is the Team V class list. You're just going to click on your name, and you're going to post in this little column, you're going to post the link to your project. So just make sure that the link works and make sure that you've attached the right link. Once you've attached your link, you're then going to go to Google Classroom and turn it in. Make sure that you turn it in so that we know that you're done with it and we can grade it. Again, this will be how you're graded. So the photograph that you made on the coordinate plane is worth a point. The explanation of what your picture is and why you chose it is worth a point. It does not need to be lengthy. Just quickly explain in a couple of sentences why you picked it and what your picture is. The mathematical characteristics that I explained above, there are 7 of them, and each one is worth a point. And then you need to make sure that you share it correctly and turn it into Google Classroom and click turn in. So that would be also worth a point. So the project is worth a total of 10 points. In case you're wondering more specifically how you're graded, there is a rubric attached that you can absolutely take a look at. And your final product should look something like this. So this is just an exemplar, and you can absolutely take a look at it. Notice how the roots, the axis of symmetry, the vertex were all put on the graph nice and clear. It's also clear what the parabola in this image is. And then the domain, range, and other characteristics are explained here at the bottom. All right, so make sure that you look through all of the directions. I know it looks lengthy. And check in with us if you have any questions about anything that has been described here. Be afraid to get creative, and we're excited to see what you share with us.